There is something happening around you right now that you cannot see. And it is not hiding because it is complicated. It is hiding because you were never taught to look for it in the first place. Somewhere in your daily life, a woman is behaving in a way that reveals exactly how she feels about you, and she has no idea she is doing it. You have walked past these moments before. You have lived inside conversations where the real message was never spoken out loud, and you left those rooms thinking nothing had happened at all. That is not because you are unobservant. It is because these signals were never designed to be obvious. They live underneath words, in small physical choices that happen faster than conscious thought. Tonight, that changes. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what to watch for, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. There is one signal in particular, the last one we cover, that almost no man ever catches, and it is often mistaken for something else entirely. Stay with me, because we are about to walk through all 9. Think of a detail you mentioned once, almost in passing. Not something you repeated, not something you emphasized, just a small comment that slipped out during an ordinary conversation. Weeks later, she brings it up again, unprompted. Psychologists call this selective retention, the brain's tendency to store information more deeply when it is emotionally tagged as significant. In plain terms, we remember things connected to people who matter to us. She could not have consciously decided to remember it. Her mind did that filing on its own, and it only files things this carefully for people it has already decided are worth paying attention to. One remembered detail could be a coincidence. A pattern of them is not. If she remembers your coffee order, the name of your dog, or a joke you made once and never repeated, that is not memory working randomly. That is memory working on purpose, even when she is not aware of it. So she recalls the small things you didn't expect her to keep. Pay attention. That is only where this begins, because what her memory reveals internally, her body reveals externally. Watch what happens the next time you lean forward slightly in conversation, and notice, a few seconds later, whether she does the same thing without seeming to realize it. This is called behavioral mirroring, and it is one of the oldest, most involuntary signs of connection there is. When people feel emotionally aligned with someone, their nervous systems begin to synchronize. Posture, pace of speech, even breathing rhythms start to match without either person choosing it. It is not a decision. It is closer to a reflex. You might notice her matching your drinking pace, adjusting her tone to mirror yours, or angling her body toward you even in a crowded room. Of course, mirroring alone does not prove attraction. People mirror friends, coworkers, even strangers in brief moments. But when mirroring becomes consistent across multiple interactions, it stops being incidental. It becomes a signature. And once you notice her body syncing to yours, you start to notice something else. The questions she asks you that she already knows the answers to. She already knows where you went last weekend. You told her. So why is she asking again? Almost like she is testing the story for a second time. This is a pattern behavioral researchers describe as reaction testing, asking a question not to gather new information, but to observe how someone responds under low pressure. It gives her a low-risk way to study you, your tone, your confidence, your consistency, without ever revealing that studying is what she is doing. Now, remember what I told you at the start, that there is one signal most men not only miss, but actively misread. We are getting closer to it, one layer at a time. You might be thinking, isn't this just normal curiosity? Sometimes yes, but repeated questions about things she already has the answer to are rarely about information. They are about observation. And once you understand that her questions are a form of quiet research, you start to notice something even more revealing. The way her voice itself changes only around you. Compare, just once, how she speaks to you against how she speaks to everyone else in the same room. Not the words, the tone, the pace. This is something linguists call prosodic shift, subtle changes in pitch, rhythm, and softness that happen involuntarily depending on who we are speaking to. Of course, everyone adjusts tone slightly depending on context, so one moment alone means little. But when her voice consistently slows, softens, or drops half a register specifically around you and not with others in the same conversation, That shift is telling you something her words are not. Vocal tone is one of the hardest things to consciously fake because it is controlled by parts of the brain tied to emotional regulation, not deliberate decision-making. That is exactly what makes it trustworthy. If her voice softens for you and sharpens for everyone else, that difference did not happen by accident. And if her voice softens around you, watch closely what happens to her tone the moment another woman enters the picture. She will never say she noticed the other woman in the room, but she noticed. This is one of the more uncomfortable signals to talk about because it does not look warm. It looks like tension or a subtle edge in her comments. What is actually happening is closer to territorial instinct, a subconscious response tied to perceived competition for someone she already values. It might show up as a slightly sharper comment about another woman's outfit, a joke that lands a little too pointed, or a comparison she makes that seems to come from nowhere. This does not mean jealousy proves attraction on its own. Plenty of comparisons are just personality. But paired with everything we have already covered, it starts forming a shape. And that same instinct, the desire to hold on to something she does not want to lose, shows up again in something much quieter. The way she says goodbye. The conversation ended 5 minutes ago. She is still standing there. This lingering is one of the clearest physical tells there is, because departure delay research shows that people subconsciously slow down endings with individuals they do not want to stop interacting with. She might find one more thing to mention, walk a few extra steps beside you, or simply stand in place a beat longer than the moment requires. Think back to a goodbye that felt slightly longer than it needed to be, one you brushed off without thinking twice. That small delay was not nothing. It was her body resisting an ending her mind had already accepted. Of course, context matters. Sometimes people linger out of simple friendliness. But when lingering repeats itself across multiple goodbyes, it stops being politeness. And what she does in your presence is only half the picture. The other half is what she says about you when you are nowhere near the room. She was not asked. She brought you up anyway. This is one of the more revealing signals because talking about someone to a third party, unprompted, is a way of processing an emotional reaction out loud, often before a person consciously understands the reaction themselves. This might sound like a passing mention to a friend, a comment framed as casual, or a story she tells that centers on something you said. On its own, one mention proves little, but repeated, voluntary mentions of you, especially framed as offhand, reveal something she may not be ready to say directly to your face. Before we move forward, there is one layer to this most explanations skip entirely. The way she talks about you when nervous is often more revealing than when she talks about you when relaxed. And nerves are exactly where we are headed next. She is composed everywhere else, except with you. And that is exactly the point. This might be the most misunderstood signal of the entire list, because most men assume confidence and nervousness cannot coexist in the same person. So if a woman seems otherwise self-assured, they dismiss any nervous behavior as unrelated. But attraction-based nervousness activates a very specific stress response, separate from general social anxiety, and it only appears around people who matter emotionally. A composed, articulate woman may suddenly fumble a sentence, over-explain something simple, or laugh slightly too quickly at something only mildly funny, only around you. That is not a contradiction. That is proof. Of course, everyone has an off day, and one nervous moment alone does not confirm anything. But a woman who is calm everywhere except in your presence is not accidentally nervous. She is selectively nervous, and selective nervousness has a cause. If nerves are what she cannot fully control, there is one more thing she actively tries to hide, and it might be the most telling sign of all. For half a second before she catches herself, you will see it. This is what we call an affect leak, a brief, unfiltered emotional reaction that appears before a person has time to consciously manage their expression. It might happen after an unexpected compliment, a joke that lands closer to real than either of you expected, or a moment of surprising physical closeness. For less than a second, her real reaction shows, eyes widening slightly, a genuine smile before the composed one replaces it, a breath held a beat too long. Then, almost instantly, she resets to whatever expression she intended to show. That flash is the truth the other 8 signals were only hinting at all along. 9 signals, one truth underneath all of them. And now you know exactly what to watch for, even in the moments she never wanted you to see. Everything we just walked through points back to one simple idea. Attraction rarely announces itself with words. It leaks out sideways, through memory, through voice, through timing, through the small things a person cannot fully control. You do not need to overanalyze every glance or every pause from here forward. You do not need to turn every interaction into an investigation. You just need to notice the pattern when it repeats, because a single moment means little, but a repeated pattern means almost everything. Which of these 9 have you noticed before but never had the words for? Tell me the number in the comments below. I read every one of them, and I want to know which signal hit closest to something real in your own life. If this kind of insight is useful to you, there is more of it here, because understanding how people actually communicate changes how you experience every relationship in your life, not just the romantic ones. Next time, we are covering the one sign women themselves call the most embarrassing to get caught doing, and why men almost always misread it as rejection when it is actually the opposite.